Hi, I'm Brett Crandall, Garden City. This is regarding House Bill 2426, which would disallow trans people from updating their gender marker on their driver's license as a direct reaction to Kansas v. Harper in 2023, SB 180. Now, I believe you all are smart men. Can you define for the room what being intersex is? The I in LGBTQIA and how those intersex Kansans are falsely defined for the sake of a culture war issue when you know they pose no threat. So, what is the purpose of this bill if those Kansans in fact exist? So, if you can start with your definition of intersex, please.
So I'm not a doctor, but I was on a judiciary committee, and we heard that bill Tuesday, I believe it was, and we had medical testimony about that issue. And my understanding from the medical testimony was that with respect to intersex people, which is about 2% of the population, I believe, that ultimately you can make a determination as to which biological sex those people were. I can't go into the biology. I don't pretend to be a doctor, but that was the testimony that we received.
Okay, I'm going to chime in here because he is kind of correct. That is the only testimony they received at that committee. But during the committee, they also admitted that there was a plethora of information opposing the bill, and none of that was brought into committee because it was so large in comparison that they needed to condense it, and that was going to take a few more weeks. But they decided to do the committee meeting anyway without any of that information, although they did have access to it on a drive called the S drive, which is just some legislative drive that the legislators had access to, but the general public did not. So that part of the information is being left out here.
As to the purpose of the purpose is to ensure that people's biological gender or sex, the terms seem to be used interchangeably.
Okay, I'm back again. I have a feeling I'm going to be popping up a lot in this one. There's a lot of very ignorant takes said during this back and forth. But no, those two terms are not interchangeable. They're only interchangeable by people who don't actually understand the terms. Gender is a social construct. Sex is a biological determined thing. So, and it's not even that determined. I'll get in more into that in a little bit.
Are on their birth certificate and their driver's license. And the reason for that, among others, is that it's important for law enforcement for purposes of making arrests and so forth, that they can be sure who people are. There was testimony about instance where that the person had changed their gender on their driver's license, and consequently they avoided arrest.
And I'm back again. For those that don't know, my wife is a director of 911 and has to deal with a lot of these communication systems and record systems on the national state scale. So what he's discussing is basically somebody did a gender marker change and they didn't get caught. And it's only one instance that he's talking about, but they're using that as an anecdotal thing. This happens all the time for a million different reasons. The thing is, law enforcement does have the information when somebody does do a gender check. What happened in this case, most likely, is that somebody just effed up and didn't pay attention, or somebody didn't document it correctly. And that happens hundreds of times a day in just one county alone, probably. Well, maybe not hundreds in one county per day, but you get the idea. It happens all the time. I don't think I can think of a day where my wife wasn't coming home complaining about another record issue. I think the system's called NCIC, National Criminal Information Center, or something. Anyway, or NCIS or something like that. Anyway, this big system, they put all the data in there. One of the pieces of data is if somebody does do a gender marker change, that is in there too. So it's not like it's not existing. That this idea that it doesn't exist and they just magically, all the information's gone. No, somebody just effed up, and we F up all the time. But that doesn't mean we have to deny this ability for other people to, on their license. So that's all that is.
As there was also testimony from a hospitalist at, I think it was Wichita Hospital, about the importance of when people come in emergency situations, they may not be able to talk and so forth, so they need to be able to rely on for instance, what the driver's license says their biological sex is to quickly make medical decisions. And she emphasized the importance of knowing what one's biological sex was. So
And the thing that he's leaving out is that literally all your medications also affect emergency care. So knowing that somebody is transitioning or has transitioned and is on certain hormonal treatments is also an important part to know in the emergency care. And also, maybe their gender marker says M on it, but they are transitioned to female, and now they're being treated as a male, but they're actually should be treated as a female in certain aspects. So no matter what, this is going to be a sticky situation, and that does not fix it. And also, he would know all this if he read the rest of the stuff in the S drive or let those uh, uh, medical professionals talk.
those,
Intersex.
excuse me,
What if it is intersex?
as I,
What if they are intersex and they have more than one thing going on?
as I said, the testimony we got was that ultimately you could make a determination.
Who does?
Okay, please allow them to answer the question.
Go on.
The doctors make that
Not the
determination.
individuals.
Yeah, as I said, that was what I was told. I'm not a doctor, but we do have a doctor in the house, and I'll defer to him.
Thanks, Bob, for yielding. I've taken care of patients who had like Turner syndrome, who are true intersex people, and there will be carve outs for folks who are truly intersex. So we haven't seen this in the Senate, but I'll amend it if I have to when it comes over.
I honestly probably couldn't define intersect to your understanding that you would believe what we haven't heard anything in the committees I'm in. I see that the Attorney General seems to be pushing this. We'll hear a lot more about it here in the near future.
Okay, I'm going to end this by chiming in. I do have some background knowledge on intersex biology a little bit. I'm not an expert by any means, but I at least have a degree in biology, and I did take a ton of developmental biology and sexual reproductive physiology in college. And we did actually have to discuss this and go over this. In addition, I just talk to people, and I know intersex people, and I just have learned of various people's journeys in life. So this the idea that Lewis said that they can determine with intersex is the determination. It's male, female, intersex. Intersex basically covers a wide plethora because there's a lot of different ways that you don't end up as male or female. You just end up in some mix of the two, or some weird amalgamation, or maybe neither, or some combination thereof. The people that have it, they determine for themselves what makes them happy, basically, because that is them. Anything to change that, you have to basically physically carve out the body or put them on hormone therapy. There's somewhere between 15 and 20 something different scenarios that create these, and they all have a spectrum within each disorder on how it happens. I'm just going to speak for someone's journey that shared it with me. Basically, they were transitioning male to female, and then when they went through the process, they actually found out that they were intersex. There is some theory that there's a large percentage within the trans community that might actually be intersex, and that might be why the bodily questions and feelings that they are experiencing are there. In this person's case, outwardly, they presented as male. Once they started doing hormone therapy, they found out that their hormones were out of whack and they actually didn't need estrogen because their body was producing tons of it. And then when they did a CT scan of their body, which most people do not get a full body CT scan, they found out that this person had ovaries, which explained the estrogen. But that on the outside, unless you cut the person open or did a full body scan, you're not going to discover things like this. So that's where the intersex is. It is a very defined thing in the medical community. I don't know who Lewis is talking to. I know he didn't look at a bunch of the information because they admitted it during that committee that he talked about at the beginning. So that's where that is. It's a wide spectrum, and it's very actually pretty defined but undefined because there is just such a spectrum and amalgamations within it. So to define it into one nail kind of situation is not going to work. In addition, we all have our own autonomy, we all have our own sentience, and we have self-determination.